Hello and welcome to the first lesson in this course, and it's kind of an interesting lesson. It's a little bit different than the rest of the lessons actually, in that I won't be discussing common errors and how to fix them. I'm just going to be discussing the parts of speech or the parts of the sentence, and it will kind of lay a foundation for the other material that we'll be covering in the course. You probably could skip this lesson and still do fine in the other ones, but I think what this lesson does is it gives you a language and a chance to learn some of the terminology that I'll be using throughout the class. So the first thing I want to discuss is how a sentence is kind of like a cake. You could technically make a cake with just a few basic ingredients. You have flour, sugar, eggs, and water. Those are just the basic ingredients of a basic cake, but as we know, there can be very beautiful cakes with lots of frosting, lots of decorations, and it's kind of the same thing with a sentence. In order to have a sentence, all you need is a subject and a verb, or basically a noun and a verb. For example, dogs run. This is a complete sentence. It has a verb, run, and it has a noun, dogs, that's the thing doing the action of the verb. So this is actually a complete sentence. It's a very basic and simple sentence. Now you could, in a sense, add decorations and icing on the cake. You could say, dogs run around whenever they are let off their leashes. And what that basically does is just add extra detail to that basic sentence, that basic core of the sentence, which is a subject and a verb. In this lesson, we'll be talking about the 8 parts of speech. And so think of these things as ingredients to a sentence, the way that we can make sentences rich, and it also will give a vocabulary for discussing. So let's get started right away with the first part of speech, and that is verbs. So a verb, as you may know, it indicates action or a state of being. So for example, an action verb would be, an example here, squirrel eats candy. Okay, eats is the action verb. So another function of verbs is to be a linking verb. And this kind of like, this is an equal sign. The squirrel seems nice. What you're saying there is the squirrel equals nice in a sense. It doesn't really convey action. You could say a state of being, a be verb. The squirrel is quiet. Again, this doesn't convey action so much, but it does act as a kind of equal sign. Okay, the next part of speech is a noun. So nouns indicate people, places, things, ideas, and emotions. Okay, so we'll look at some examples here. Carpenter, an officer, a lake, tree, boat. These are things. Or you have things like democracy. That is an idea. It's not tangible. So don't think of nouns as tangible things necessarily. They can be ideas or states of being. Anger, happiness. These are nouns. So nouns that refer to specific things are called proper nouns. Something like Jennifer, a person, Yellowstone, a place, Lake Tahoe, Titanic, Microsoft. These are proper nouns. They refer to a specific thing that actually kind of has a name and identity. Okay, so the next part of speech is pronouns. And pronouns help us avoid awkward repetition of the same noun. If we didn't have pronouns, for example, a sentence might sound like this. I like my car when my car has just been washed because my car's bright red paint shines in the sun. We can see how it's kind of awkward there to have the repetition of my car, my car, my car. And what do we do in normal speech? We put in pronouns. I like my car when it has just been washed because its bright red paint shines in the sun. Here, it refers to my car, so rather than repeating my car, we can just say it. Rather than repeating the name of a person over and over again, let's say Jennifer, we would just say she, referring back to that. So we have personal pronouns, I, me, you, he, she, it, him, her. Okay, so these refer to, they're called they refer to persons. We have demonstrative pronouns, this, that, these, and those. And relative pronouns, who, whom, whose, which, and that. And indefinite pronouns, things like another, anybody, anything, these do not refer to a definite person or object. Everyone, nobody, many, any, most, some. You get and you don't need to memorize these. You don't need to worry that you're not comprehending, how each one of them works. It's just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here in terms of pronouns. All right, the next part of speech we'll talk about is adjectives. So adjectives describe, or in other words, modify nouns. Sometimes if you modify a car, you put new paint on it, maybe you put a different muffler, you put different accessories. That's kind of what adjectives do. They modify nouns. They answer these questions. Which one? What kind? How many? So for example, we have the warm coat, the red car, the silly dog, obnoxious child, or 7 cookies. That tells us how many. Okay, so we've covered the first few parts of speech here. Hang with me. This is kind of a long lesson. I'm just plowing right through. Take a deep breath and we'll just keep moving along here. Okay, the next one we'll look at are adverbs. So adverbs are kind of like adjectives, where adjectives modify or enhance nouns. An adverb modifies or enhances other verbs or adjectives or even other adverbs. So let's look at some examples here. So adverbs answer the questions how, when, where, how often, to what extent. And the examples here, he ate slowly. That says how he ate. We will eat soon. This says when we'll eat. I want to eat here. Okay, this is where. Let's eat frequently. We will eat enough. Now, it's not a sure thing all the time for sure, as we can see in these examples, but often adverbs end in ly, as the example here, frequently or slowly. Okay, so the sixth part of speech are prepositions. Prepositions describe the position or relationship between words or ideas in a sentence. I know that seems kind of abstract, so let's look at some examples of prepositions. Take a glance at this list. If you want to even pause the video here and just kind of look at the list, you can see how these words describe position or relationship between things in a sentence. So you can have a prepositional phrase, and that is just a preposition plus a noun. So, among the trees, into the car, during my lunch break, from my grandmother. See how these things describe the positional relationship between elements of a sentence. All right, number 7, conjunctions. The conjunctions will join, or you can think of it as conjoin, words or parts of a sentence. You've heard of conjoined twins. These are twins that are attached, and that's kind of what a conjunction does. It attaches two different sentences or two parts of a sentence. So we'll look at some examples of types of conjunctions here. There's coordinating conjunctions, and there's a nice acronym that helps us remember these coordinating conjunctions. Fanboys. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. This is a way of remembering coordinating conjunctions. In later lessons, we'll talk about why it matters that it's a coordinating conjunction versus a different type of conjunction. But let's look at some examples of how coordinating conjunctions work. I hate snowboarding, but I love skiing. So there's the B in the fanboys. I have not seen the movie, so you are ruining it for me. You can see how these conjunctions are joining two parts of a sentence. Now, there's these things called subordinating conjunctions. And I say in later lessons, particularly when we talk about commas, we'll talk about the difference and why it matters in terms of punctuation. But a subordinating conjunction, let's just take a look at the list here. These can come in the middle of a sentence so that they join two parts of a sentence, or they can come at the beginning of a sentence, and let's look at some examples of that. I had to get a physical exam before I could play football. I cannot go swimming because I just ate a huge meal. We can see how these two words join these two parts of the sentences. Or these subordinating conjunctions can come at the beginning of a sentence, but notice how there's a pause and a comma here for the rest of the sentence. Before I could play football, I had to get a physical exam. Because I just ate a huge meal, I cannot go swimming. All right, last is our interjections. And there's not a whole lot to say here. Here's some examples. Hey, wow, ouch, great. So these are just kind of words that are interjected into a sentence, and we can see how they might work. Hey, get over here. Great, the plans are coming together. Well, I guess that's the way it goes. Just to review the parts of speech, we've kind of gone over a lot of material here. And that's okay if you don't get it all. This is going to be reinforced throughout, and you'll see why all this matters. I promised that this course would be about identifying and fixing common errors, and the rest of the lessons are in fact about that. But this will give us a language to discuss those other rules. So just a quick review for parts of speech: verb, noun, pronoun, adjective, adverb, preposition, conjunction, and interjections. So these are the ingredients that make up a sentence. Of course, sentences can become very complex and have lots of different details and things going on within that sentence. But these are the basic ingredients. And as I say, this will just give us a language so that for the rest of the course, when I talk about a pronoun or a conjunction, you'll have an idea of what I mean. So thank you for joining me in this lesson, and I can't wait to get started in the next ones where we'll actually identify common problems and how to fix those.